plane wasn't even full yet, but the tension already was. Marcus Reed stepped into first class without rushing. Row 2A, window seat. He checked his ticket once, then sat down. Simple, clean, quiet. A flight attendant stopped beside him. Smile, thin, controlled. "Sir, can I see your boarding pass?" Marcus handed it over. She scanned it fast, too fast, then looked at him again, longer this time. "This seat is for first-class passengers." Her voice dropped on the last word. Passengers nearby turned. Not obvious, but enough. Marcus blinked once. Calm. "I know." A beat. "I'm in the right seat." The smile vanished. "I'm going to need you to come with me." Not a request, a command. A man across the aisle leaned toward his wife. "Here we go." A soft laugh. Marcus felt it. Not loud, not open, but heavy, familiar. He didn't move. "I paid for the seat." The attendant's jaw tightened. "Sir, if you don't comply, we'll have to remove you from the aircraft." Remove. The word hit harder than it should. Marcus looked up at her. Steady, measured. "Are you removing me or making a mistake you can't take back?" Silence. Sharp, cutting through the cabin. Then, from the front of the plane, a voice. Cold, controlled. "Is there a problem here?" And suddenly, everything changed. The cabin hummed low. Air vents whispered overhead. Soft footsteps. Bags shifting. Seatbelts clicking. Marcus Reed stepped into first class. No rush. No hesitation. Just quiet certainty. Row 2A. Window. He checked his ticket once, then sat down. The leather seat creaked softly beneath him. Outside, the runway stretched wide and empty. Still, waiting. "Sir." The voice came quick. Too quick. Marcus looked up. A flight attendant stood beside him. Perfect posture. Perfect uniform. Imperfect tone. "Can I see your boarding pass?" He handed it over without a word. Her eyes scanned it. Fast. Then again. Slower. Her lips pressed tight. "This seat is for first-class passengers." Marcus held her gaze. Calm. "I know." A small pause. "I'm sitting in it." A flicker across her face. Not confusion. Something sharper. "I'm going to need you to come with me." Marcus didn't move. Across the aisle, a man leaned back, watching. Curious. Amused. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked. The attendant lowered her voice. "Yes." One word. Heavy. "You're not supposed to be seated here." The words landed clean. Too clean, like they'd been used before. Marcus exhaled slowly. Measured. "I have a valid ticket." "Then you won't mind stepping aside while we verify." A few passengers looked over now, not hiding it anymore. A woman whispered behind him. "Why do people do this?" Marcus heard it. Of course he did. He stayed seated. "I'm already verified." The attendant's smile returned, but thinner, sharper. "Sir, I don't want to delay boarding." Translation. "You are the problem." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Then don't." A beat. Short. Dangerous. Her jaw tightened. "I'm asking you one more time." From somewhere behind, a phone camera lifted. Quiet. Careful. Recording. Marcus noticed. Said nothing. "I paid for this seat," he said again. The attendant's patience cracked. "Sir, if you don't comply, we will have to remove you from this aircraft." Remove. There it was. Official now. The air shifted. Passengers leaned in, some pretending not to, others not pretending at all. Marcus felt it settle on him. That familiar weight. Not new. Never new. He looked up at her. Eye steady. Voice quiet. "Are you removing me?" A pause. Sharp. "Or making a mistake you can't undo?" Silence snapped across the row. The attendant didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, she reached for the intercom phone near the wall. Pressed a button. "Assistance needed in first class." Her voice changed now. Professional. Cold. Marcus leaned back slowly into his seat. Not relaxed. Not tense. Controlled. Across the aisle, the man who had been watching shook his head. Unbelievable. Marcus turned slightly. "Yeah." A beat. It is. The attendant glanced at him again. This time, no mask, just irritation. Security will be here shortly. The word landed heavier than remove. Marcus nodded once, almost to himself. Outside, a baggage cart rolled past a window. Slow, unaware. Inside, everything had stopped. No one spoke now. Not really. Just waiting, watching, judging. Marcus folded his hands together. Still, grounded. Footsteps approached from the front of the cabin. Firm, measured, not rushing, not hesitant. Something about them felt different. The attendant straightened instantly. Marcus didn't turn yet, but he felt it, the shift. And then, a voice, low, controlled. Explain what's happening here. Marcus finally looked up, and for the first time, the room hesitated. The footsteps stopped 2 rows behind Marcus. Not close enough. Not yet. Security is on the way. The attendant said it louder this time. For the cabin. Not for him. A ripple moved through the passengers. Subtle, but real. Marcus kept his eyes forward, hands folded. Still, across the aisle, the man leaned closer. Lower voice. But seriously, why fight it? Marcus turned his head slowly. Measured. I'm not fighting. A beat. I'm sitting. The man smirked. Yeah, in the wrong place. Silence. Short. Heavy. Marcus looked at him for a moment longer, then turned back. No argument. No reaction. That made it worse. Behind him, a whisper. They always make it difficult. A soft chuckle followed. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Just 1 second. Then opened them again. The attendant shifted her weight. Arms crossed now. Guarded. Watching him like a problem waiting to grow. You're holding up boarding, she said. Marcus glanced toward the aisle. Passengers were still moving. Slow, but moving. No, he said calmly. I'm not. Her lips tightened. A second crew member approached. Younger, quieter, but watching closely. What's going on? The second attendant asked. He refuses to leave first class, the first replied. Quick, sharp, controlled. The second attendant looked at Marcus, then at the ticket, still in her colleague's hand. Did you scan it? Yes. Too fast. And a pause. Small, but visible. It says 2A. The second attendant frowned slightly. Then, he needs to step aside for verification. The first cut in, there was again, verification. A word doing too much work. Marcus leaned back slightly. Eyes steady. How many times does it need to be verified? He asked. Neither of them answered. Behind him, a phone tilted higher. More obvious now. Recording. A woman across the road noticed it, then looked away quickly. No one wanted to be involved, just close enough to watch. The second attendant lowered her voice. You could just cooperate. Marcus met her eyes. I already did. A beat. Then do it again, she said softly. That one landed differently. Not loud, not aggressive, but clear. Marcus nodded once. Slow. So that it feels right to you? He asked. The second attendant didn't respond. The first one stepped forward again. Impatient now. This is not up for debate. Marcus looked up at her. It wasn't a debate until you made it one. The tension snapped tighter. A passenger stood halfway in the aisle, pretending to adjust a bag. Listening. Another whispered, Why doesn't he just move? Marcus heard that too. He shifted slightly in his seat, not leaving, just grounding himself deeper. Because I don't have to, he said quietly. The words didn't travel far, but they landed. The first attendant exhaled sharply. That's enough. She turned, reached for her phone again. This is escalating, she said into it. Escalating. Marcus almost smiled, not from humor, from recognition. The label had changed. Now it was official. Across the aisle, the man shook his head again. This is going to end badly. Marcus glanced at him. For who? He asked. The man didn't answer. Footsteps again. Closer this time. Heavier. More deliberate. Not crew. Not passengers. Authority. The second attendant straightened. Nervous now. The first one didn't move, but her posture sharpened. A uniform appeared at the edge of the aisle. Dark, structured, unquestionable. A security officer stepped forward. "Who's the passenger?" The first attendant pointed. "Directly at Marcus. This one." "Not, sir. Not passenger. This one." The officer stepped closer. Slow, measured. Marcus looked up at him. Calm, still. "Sir," the officer said, "you're going to need to stand up." The cabin held its breath. Marcus didn't move. "Not yet." The officer stopped beside Marcus's seat. Close enough to take space. Close enough to take control. "Sir," he said again, firmer now, "I need you to stand up." Marcus looked at him, then at the badge, then back at his face. "Why?" he asked. The officer's expression didn't change. "Because you're being reported as non-compliant." Reported. Another word doing heavy lifting. Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm sitting in my assigned seat." The officer shifted slightly, hand resting near his belt. Not aggressive, but not neutral either. "That's not what I asked." "A beat. I asked you to stand." The cabin tightened. Every small sound felt louder now. A seatbelt click. A cough. Someone whispering. "This is getting serious." Marcus kept his voice even. "If there's a problem with my ticket, we can resolve it right here." The officer tilted his head, studying him. "That's not how this works." A pause. "Then explain how it works," Marcus said. The officer didn't like that. It showed, just slightly, in the eyes. "You follow instructions," he replied. Marcus held his gaze. "And if the instruction is wrong?" Silence. Short, but sharp. The first attendant stepped in quickly. "He's been refusing to cooperate since boarding." Marcus didn't look at her. "I handed you my ticket," he said. "I answered your questions." I stayed calm. A beat. What part of that is refusal? The officer glanced at the attendant, then back at Marcus. "Sir," he said, slower now, "we don't need to argue this." Marcus leaned back slightly, still seated, still grounded. "I'm not arguing," he said. "I'm asking." That word again. Asking. It didn't fit the situation. And that made it worse. Behind him, the phone was still recording. Steady. Focused. A quiet voice from 2 rows back. "Just do what they're saying." Marcus heard it. Of course he did. He turned slightly. Not fully. Just enough. "Would you?" he asked. The voice disappeared. The officer took one step closer, now fully in Marcus's space. "Stand up," he said again. "No, please." No explanation. Marcus looked up at him. Eyes steady. "Am I being detained?" The question landed differently. The officer blinked once. "Quick. You're being asked to comply." "That's not the same thing," Marcus replied. A shift. Subtle, but real. The officer's tone hardened. "If you refuse, we can escalate this." There it was. Clear now. Marcus nodded once. "You already have." The words hung in the air. The second attendant shifted uncomfortably, glancing between them. "Maybe we should just recheck the system," she started. "We already did." The first snapped. Too fast. Too defensive. Marcus noticed. The officer did too. Just for a second. Then control returned. "Sir," the officer said. "Last chance." A beat. "Stand up." The cabin froze. Even the air felt still. Marcus looked down at his hands, then back up. "Before I do that," he said quietly, "I want you to say something clearly." The officer frowned slightly. "What?" Marcus held his gaze. Didn't blink. "Say that I'm being removed because of my behavior." A pause. Longer this time. The officer didn't answer. "Go ahead," Marcus continued. "Say it." The attendant shifted again. "Sir, you're making this harder than it needs to be." Marcus didn't look at her. "I'm making it clear," he said. Silence. The officer's jaw tightened. "You're refusing to follow instructions." Marcus nodded slowly. "Because the instruction doesn't match the situation." Another pause. The officer leaned in slightly. Lower voice now. More controlled. More dangerous. "Stand up," he repeated, "or we will physically remove you." There it was. No more soft language. No more cover. Across the aisle. The man who had been watching leaned back, eyes wide now. "This is crazy," he whispered. Marcus heard him. He looked forward again. "Calm. Still. Then do it," Marcus said quietly. The words dropped heavy. The officer didn't move. Not yet. Something had shifted. Again. The second attendant looked nervous now. Really nervous. "Maybe we should wait," she started. "For what?" the first snapped. The officer raised a hand slightly, silencing both of them. His eyes stayed on Marcus, studying him, not just as a passenger, as a decision, as a risk, as something that might not go the way it usually does. Behind them, more footsteps, different, slower, not rushing, not reactive, intentional. The officer glanced up, just briefly, then back at Marcus. "Last chance," he said. Marcus didn't respond. He just sat there, unmoved, unshaken, and that, more than anything, changed the room. The footsteps stopped at the front of first class. A voice followed, calm, controlled, but carrying something heavier than authority. "Why is my flight delayed?" The officer straightened instantly. The attendants froze. Marcus didn't turn yet, but he felt it, the shift, stronger this time, final. And then, the voice again, closer now. "I asked a question." Marcus slowly lifted his eyes, because he already knew this moment was about to change everything. The cabin didn't move. It held, like something fragile was about to crack. "Why is my flight delayed?" The voice came again, closer now, sharper. The officer stepped back half an inch. Not much, but enough to notice. "We're handling a situation, Captain," he said. "Captain." The word moved through the cabin like a quiet signal. Marcus still hadn't turned. Not yet, because right now, everything was balanced on something smaller. A decision. "Sir," the officer said again, lower this time, "I'm not asking anymore." "A beat. I'm telling you." Marcus looked down at his hands. Still folded, still steady, but his fingers tightened. Just slightly. For a moment, he imagined it, standing up, stepping into the aisle, letting it end. Quick, simple, quiet. He'd done it before, different place. Same feeling. Give in, de-escalate, disappear. Behind him, a voice whispered, "Just stand up, it's not worth it." Another voice, "They'll drag him out if he doesn't." Marcus closed his eyes, just for a second, not to escape. To think, because he knew something they didn't. This wasn't about his seat. It never was. "Sir," the officer again. Closer now. Marcus opened his eyes. Looked up. "Okay," he said quietly. The word dropped. Heavy. The attendant exhaled. Relief. Quick. Visible. The officer nodded once. "Good." Marcus leaned forward slightly, hands pressing into the armrest. He was going to stand. The entire row leaned in, watching, waiting. This was the moment, and for a second, it looked like it would end right there. Quiet, clean, predictable. Then, "Wait." The word cut through everything. Not loud, but sharp enough to stop motion. Marcus paused, half risen. The officer frowned. Who said that? A woman stood 2 rows back, phone still in her hand. Recording. Her voice shook slightly, but didn't break. "He hasn't done anything wrong." Silence snapped tight again. The attendant turned quickly. "Ma'am, please sit down." "No," she said, stronger now. "I've been watching this the whole time." Marcus stayed still, not sitting, not standing, caught in between. The officer looked at her, annoyed. "This doesn't involve you." "It does if you're treating him like that," she replied. A ripple moved through the passengers, some uncomfortable, some irritated, some thinking. The first attendant stepped forward, tension rising fast. "Ma'am, you need to stop recording and take your seat." The woman didn't lower her phone. "Why?" she asked. No one answered immediately, because that question, simple as it was, pressed in the wrong place. Marcus slowly straightened back into his seat, not fully relaxed, but no longer rising. The officer noticed. "Sir," he said sharper now, "don't make this worse." Marcus looked at him. Calm. I'm not the one escalating, he said. The words landed harder this time, because now someone else had seen it. The woman stepped slightly into the aisle. You didn't even check his ticket properly, she said. The second attendant hesitated. We did, she replied, but softer, less certain. The woman tilted her phone slightly, showing the screen. I recorded it. A pause. You looked at it for 2 seconds. The first attendant's face tightened. That's not accurate. It's on video, the woman said. The officer glanced between them. Something was slipping. Control. Narrative. Ma'am, he said, this is not helping. No, she replied. It is. Another passenger shifted. Then another. The energy in the cabin changed. Not fully, but enough. Doubt. Marcus felt it. Not support. Not yet, but cracks. Small ones. The officer exhaled slowly. All right, he said. New tone. More controlled. Everyone needs to stay seated. Then to Marcus. And you, stand up now. The pressure snapped back. Stronger. More urgent. Marcus held his gaze. Why? He asked again. This time, no patience left. Because I said so. There it was. Raw. Unfiltered. The woman shook her head. That's not a reason. The officer turned toward her. That's enough. And then a new voice, right behind them. Calm, measured, but carrying something heavier than everything else in the room. No. A pause. That's enough. Silence fell instantly. Not forced. Not fragile. Final. The officer turned. Slowly. The attendants froze. Marcus didn't move. He didn't need to, because something had just entered the room. That didn't ask, didn't assume, didn't hesitate. It decided. The captain stepped forward, eyes scanning once, taking everything in. Marcus, the officer, the attendants, the woman with the phone, the entire story, in one glance. Then he spoke. Someone explained to me, a beat, sharp, controlled, why a confirmed passenger is being threatened with removal from my aircraft. The words hit like impact. No one answered, not immediately, because suddenly the story had changed, and everyone knew it. No one spoke, not right away. The captain stood still, not imposing, not loud, but everything in the cabin bent toward him. I asked a question. His voice stayed calm. That made it worse. The officer cleared his throat. We have a non-compliant passenger. The captain lifted a hand. Small movement. Immediate silence. I'll decide that. A beat. His eyes moved. Slow. Precise. First, the attendant. Then, the second crew member. Then, the officer. Finally, Marcus. And when his eyes stopped there, something changed. Just for a second. Recognition? Maybe, but it passed quickly. Hidden. What's your name, sir? The captain asked. Marcus Reed. The captain nodded once, like the name meant something. Mr. Reed, he said, are you seated in your assigned seat? Marcus held his gaze. Yes. The captain turned. Ticket. The first attendant handed it over. This time, carefully, the captain looked at it. Not rushed, not distracted. He read every line. Then read it again. The silence stretched. Passengers leaned in. Not obvious, but focused. The captain handed the ticket back. He's in 2A. Simple. Final. The first attendant spoke quickly. He refused to step aside for verification. The captain didn't look at her yet. How many times was it verified? He asked. No answer. The second attendant shifted. Once. A pause. Briefly. The captain nodded slightly. Briefly, he repeated. Now he looked at the first attendant. Why was that not sufficient? She hesitated. Just long enough. We had concerns. What concerns? Another pause. Longer. More visible. The cabin felt it. The answer didn't come. Because there wasn't one. Not a real one. The officer stepped in, trying to regain ground. He refused a direct instruction. The captain turned to him. What instruction? To stand up. Why? A beat to resolve the situation. The captain tilted his head slightly. What situation? Silence. Again. Sharp. Uncomfortable. Marcus watched it unfold. Quiet. Still. Not surprised. Just tired. The woman with the phone lowered it slightly. Not stopping. Just watching closer now. The captain stepped forward. One step. Enough. Let's be clear, he said. His voice stayed level. But something underneath it hardened. A ticket was presented. A beat. It matched the seat. Another beat. And yet, he looked at the attendant. You escalated. The word landed heavy. The first attendant tried again. He was being difficult. No, Marcus said, soft, but direct. The captain didn't stop him. I was being questioned, Marcus continued. A pause, repeatedly. The captain nodded once. I can see that. The officer shifted his stance, less confident now. Sir, he said, we were following protocol. The captain looked at him, longer this time. Show me the protocol, he said. The officer didn't answer, because he couldn't. Another silence, but this one felt different. Not tense, exposing. The captain exhaled slowly. Then he looked back at Marcus, and this time he didn't hide it. Recognition, clear, certain. Mr. Reed, he said, a slight shift in tone. Respect. Have we met before? Marcus studied him for a second. Then a small nod. Yes. The cabin leaned in again. The attendant frowned slightly. Confused now, the officer glanced between them. The captain stepped closer. Just one step. Last year, he said, Dallas. Marcus's expression didn't change much, but his eyes did. You gave a briefing, the captain continued. A pause. On emergency system failures. Silence dropped, heavier than before. The second attendant's eyes widened slightly. The officer blinked. Once. The first attendant didn't move. Marcus nodded once. That was me. The captain's jaw tightened. Not in anger, in realization. He turned slowly, back to the crew. And now, everything was different. You attempted to remove a passenger. A beat, without cause. The words landed clean. The officer stepped back half a step. The first attendant opened her mouth, then stopped, because suddenly there was nothing left to say. The captain looked at Marcus again, but this time there was no question, only certainty. And then he said something that shifted the entire cabin. Mr. Reed. A pause. Would you like me to explain to them who you are? The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus didn't answer immediately, because he knew whatever came next would change everything. The cabin held its breath. No movement, no whispers, just waiting. Mr. Reed, the captain's voice stayed calm, measured. Would you like me to explain to them who you are? Every eye turned to Marcus, not judging now, not whispering, waiting. Marcus looked at him, then at the crew, then briefly at the woman still holding her phone. He could feel it, the shift, not respect, not yet, but attention, a different kind of weight. He exhaled slowly. You don't have to, he said. The captain nodded once. I know. A beat, but I think they do. Silence stretched. The first attendant stood frozen. The officer didn't move, but his posture had changed. Less forward, less certain. The captain turned. Slow, deliberate. This passenger, he said, is part of the Aviation Safety Review Board. A ripple moved through the cabin. Small, but real. The second attendant blinked. The officer frowned slightly. The first attendant's face tightened. The captain continued. He consults on aircraft emergency systems. A beat, the procedures we follow. Another beat, exists because of people like him. The words landed differently. Not loud, not dramatic, but final. Across the aisle, the man who'd been watching leaned back slowly. Oh, barely a whisper. The woman with the phone lowered it just slightly, still recording, but now focused. The officer cleared his throat. Well, that may be. The captain turned to him. Sharp. No, he said. One word. That was enough. Silence snapped back into place. Marcus sat still. Same position. Same seat. But the room had changed around him. The first attendant spoke. Finally, I didn't know. Her voice was smaller now. Marcus looked at her. That's the problem, he said. Not angry. Just clear. A pause. You didn't need to. The words stayed in the air. The second attendant looked down. Avoiding eye contact, the officer shifted again, trying to recover. We were responding to behavior. What behavior? Marcus asked. The officer stopped, because now that question had nowhere to go. You refuse to stand, he said finally. Marcus nodded. After being told to leave a seat I paid for. A beat, repeatedly. The officer's jaw tightened. The captain stepped in. That's enough. His tone stayed level, but it carried weight now. This situation was mishandled. No hesitation. No softening. Just truth. The first attendant swallowed. I was just trying to follow procedure. Show me the procedure, the captain said. Again, this time, even quieter. She couldn't. No one could, because it wasn't procedure. It was assumption. And now, it was exposed. Across the cabin, passengers shifted. Some looked down. Some stared ahead. Some looked at Marcus. Really looked. For the first time, the man across the aisle leaned forward slightly. I didn't realize, he said. Marcus glanced at him. No, he replied. You didn't. Not harsh. Just honest. The woman with the phone spoke softly. I'm keeping this. No one argued, because no one could. The captain turned back to Marcus. Mr. Reed, he said, I apologize. A pause. For what happened here? Marcus held his gaze. Thank you. But his voice carried something else. Not relief, not satisfaction. Something heavier. The captain nodded once, then turned. To the crew. This isn't over, he said. Quiet, but unmistakable. The first attendant's face dropped. The officer looked away. The second attendant stood completely still, because now this had moved beyond the cabin, beyond the moment, into consequence. The captain looked back at Marcus one last time. Please, he said, take your seat. Marcus gave a small nod. He was already sitting. But now, everyone understood. This was his seat. It always had been. The engines outside began to hum louder, the plane preparing to move. But inside, something else had already shifted, and as the cabin settled, Marcus looked out the window. Quiet, still, but his reflection in the glass didn't feel the same, because even now, even after everything, he knew one thing hadn't changed. Not really. And that thought lingered, long after the moment ended. The plane didn't move right away. It should have, but it didn't. Something invisible held it in place. Not mechanical, not technical. Human. Passengers shifted in their seats. But no one relaxed, because what just happened didn't feel finished. The woman with the phone looked down at her screen, scrolling, reviewing. Her thumb paused. Then she tapped. Upload. Marcus noticed. Not the screen. The moment. You're posting it? He asked quietly. She looked up, met his eyes. Yes. A beat. They need to see this. Marcus held her gaze for a second, then nodded. Make sure they see all of it, he said. She understood. Not just the ending. The beginning. The pressure. The silence. The truth. I will, she said. Across the aisle, the man who had been watching leaned forward again. I didn't think it was like that, he said. Marcus glanced at him. It never looks like that at first, he replied. The man nodded slowly. No defense this time. No excuses. Just quiet. At the front, the captain spoke in low tones with the crew. Not angry. Worse. Controlled. Measured. The first attendant stood stiff. Eyes forward. The second one looked shaken. The officer kept his distance now. No longer central. No longer in control. A shift, complete. A notification sound broke the silence. Then another. Then several. Passengers began checking their phones. Scrolling. Watching. The video had already started moving. Fast. Too fast to stop. The woman looked down again, eyes widening slightly. "It's spreading," she said under her breath. Marcus didn't react. Not outwardly, but inside, he felt it. The turn. Not justice. Not yet, but momentum. And momentum was harder to silence. A man a few rows back leaned into the aisle. "Is that from this flight?" he asked. No one answered. They didn't need to, because everyone already knew. The captain turned back toward Marcus, walked a few steps closer. "Mr. Reed," he said quietly, "I've contacted ground operations." Marcus looked at him. "For what?" he asked. The captain held his gaze. "To document everything properly. A beat. And to make sure this doesn't disappear." Marcus nodded once. "Good," he said, because he'd seen it before. Moments like this, handled quietly, filed away, forgotten. Not this time. The first attendant finally spoke again. "This is being taken out of context," she said. Her voice wasn't strong, but it was trying. Marcus looked at her. "What part?" he asked. She hesitated. "You refuse instructions." "I asked for a reason," Marcus replied. A pause. "You didn't give one." Silence. Again. The second attendant closed her eyes briefly, like she wished she could rewind. The officer stepped forward slightly. "Careful now. This doesn't need to go further," he said. Marcus turned to him. "It already has," he replied. The officer looked at the passengers, at the phones, at the shifting attention, and for the first time, he saw it. This wasn't contained anymore. The woman's phone buzzed again. She looked down, then back up. "There are comments already," she said. "A beat. People are asking what airline this is." The first attendant's face drained. The captain didn't react, but his eyes sharpened. "Good," he said quietly. The word surprised her, because this was no longer about protection. It was about exposure. Across the cabin, no one whispered now. No one laughed. No one leaned back in comfort, because something had changed. They weren't just watching anymore. They were part of it. Witnesses. And witnesses couldn't pretend later. Marcus leaned back slightly in his seat, the same seat. But now it felt heavier, not because of where he was, because of what it took to stay there. The engines outside grew louder, the plane preparing again, trying to move forward. But inside, everything had already shifted. The captain turned one last time to the crew. "This will be reported," he said. No hesitation. No room for interpretation. The first attendant swallowed. The officer looked away. The second attendant didn't move at all, because now, this wasn't a moment anymore. It was a record, and records don't disappear easily. Marcus looked out the window again. The runway stretched ahead, long, unforgiving, and for a moment, he wondered something. Not about this flight, not about this crew, but about the next time, the next person, the next seat. Because even now, even after everything, one question stayed with him. Would it be different if no one had recorded it? The plane finally moved. Slow, heavy, but no one celebrated it. The energy inside hadn't lifted. It had settled, deeper. Seatbelt signs stayed on. Phone stayed out. The video kept spreading. Marcus didn't check. He didn't need to. He could feel it. In the silence. In the way people avoided eye contact. In the way others now looked at him. Carefully, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen," a pause, measured, "we appreciate your patience. We experienced a delay due to an onboard situation that is now being formally reviewed." Reviewed. The word landed differently than before. This matter will be documented and addressed. No apology to the system. No excuse. Just acknowledgement. The announcement ended. The cabin stayed quiet. Across the aisle, the man leaned over again, but slower this time. "I've been reading the comments," he said. Marcus didn't turn. "They're not good," the man added. Marcus nodded once. "They shouldn't be," he replied. A beat. The man hesitated. "I'm sorry for earlier." Marcus glanced at him briefly. "For what?" he asked. The man swallowed. "For assuming." Marcus held his gaze for a second, then nodded. "That's where it starts," he said. No anger, no softness, just truth. The woman with the phone spoke quietly. "They've already identified the airline." A pause. "And the crew." The first attendant stiffened. Her hands tightened around the service cart. The second attendant looked down again. The officer had stepped further back now, almost out of the scene, but not out of it, never out of it. The captain returned to the cabin, walking slower this time, not scanning, observing. He stopped beside Marcus. "Ground operations confirmed," he said quietly. Marcus looked up. "They've logged everything." "A beat, and?" Marcus asked. The captain's expression didn't change much. "An internal investigation starts immediately." The words were calm, but final. The first attendant heard it. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Not relief, realization. The second attendant closed her eyes briefly again. The officer exhaled through his nose. No protest this time. No authority left to lean on. Marcus nodded once. "That's a start," he said. The captain studied him for a moment. "I know it's not enough," he replied. A pause. "But it won't stop there." Marcus held his gaze. He believed him, but belief didn't erase anything. Not the moment, not the pressure, not the weight. Across the cabin, passengers had gone quiet in a different way. Not tense, reflective. Some stared out windows. Some sat still with phones in their laps. Some just thought. The video had done something, not solved anything, but forced something open. And once open, it didn't close easily. The woman checked her phone again. "News pages are picking it up," she said softly. The captain heard. He nodded once. "Good," he said. Again, because now visibility mattered. More than comfort. More than quiet fixes. The first attendant finally spoke again. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said. Her voice was fragile now. Marcus looked at her. "I know," he said. "A beat. That's why it matters." She didn't respond, because that was the part that stayed. Not intention. Impact. The plane lifted slightly. Wheels leaving ground. A subtle shift. But inside, the weight remained. Marcus leaned back into his seat. Closed his eyes for a second. Not to rest. To process. Because even now, with everything moving forward, something still hadn't been answered. Not by the captain. Not by the system. Not by the moment. A quiet question. Lingering. Unresolved. He opened his eyes again. Looked out at the clouds forming below. And thought, what happens next when the cameras aren't there? The plane leveled out above the clouds. Smooth. Quiet. But inside, nothing felt light. Marcus stared out the window. White clouds stretched endlessly below. Soft. Untouched. It didn't match what he felt. A flight attendant walked down the aisle. Not the first one. Not the second. A different one. She stopped beside him. Careful. Respectful. "Sir, can I get you something?" Marcus looked up. "Water is fine," he said. She nodded quickly. No hesitation. No doubt. Just service. The way it should have been. Across the aisle. The man didn't speak anymore. He didn't need to. The shift had already happened. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. The woman with the phone leaned forward slightly. "They've posted a statement," she said quietly. Marcus turned his head. "Already?" he asked. She nodded. Corporate response. "They're calling it a failure of protocol and judgment." Marcus almost smiled. Almost. "Protocol didn't fail," he said. "A beat. It was followed, just not written anywhere." She held his gaze. Understanding. "They also said the staff involved have been removed from duty pending investigation." The words settled in. Not victory. Consequence. The difference mattered. Marcus nodded once. "Good," he said, but his voice stayed level. Because this wasn't new, just visible. The captain's voice came over the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen." A pause. "I want to personally acknowledge what occurred before departure." The cabin stilled. "What happened does not reflect the standards we are responsible for maintaining." A beat, and it will not be ignored. Silence followed. Not empty, Full, the kind that meant something had been understood. Not perfectly, but enough to begin. Marcus leaned back in his seat again. Same seat, same position, but not the same moment. The weight hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted across the cabin. Passengers moved differently now, not avoiding, not staring. Aware, a quiet kind of awareness, the kind that lingers longer than noise. The woman looked at Marcus one more time. "You changed something today," she said. Marcus shook his head slightly. "No," he replied. A beat. It was already there. Another pause. It just got seen. She nodded slowly, because that was the truth people struggled to accept. The problem wasn't new. Only the proof was. Marcus looked out the window again. The clouds had shifted, sunlight breaking through in thin lines, soft, but strong enough to be seen. He exhaled slowly. Not relief, not fully, but something close. Because even now, he knew this wasn't the end. It never was. Somewhere, another plane, another seat, another moment waiting. But maybe, just maybe, the next time, someone wouldn't have to sit through it alone. The captain walked past once more, paused briefly beside Marcus. No words, just a nod. Respect. Simple, clear. Marcus returned it. And as the plane moved forward through open sky, the cabin stayed quiet, not uncomfortable, not tense, changed, because something had been exposed, something had been challenged, and something, no matter how small, had shifted